results can be of overall three types. There is some matrix, you're growing something, right? It's a positive goal that you're trying to chase. You're growing, we are building, we're increasing. So those are the positive languages. Or it could also be negatives, which means you were giving a high discount. Now you want to cut it down, right? Because discounts are something that has to come down for you to get, make more revenue. So it could be reduce some of the things, eliminate some of the promotions that you've been doing, or adding some of the, let's say you were giving special discounts to certain groups and you want to cut it down and make it, one for all. Those are elements that can also be reduction. So it's not always, only growth. It can also be cutting down. There could be milestone based or carry forward, right? So these two are typically a date, or if you don't have a date immediately when you're trying to put the key result areas, you could also say, okay, I would track this for 1 quarter and then follow it up with something in the next quarter, right? So basically seeing, okay, how the customer feedbacks come in, and then we will see how to increase the satisfaction levels by a certain another milestone. So it could be date or milestone or carry forward. Matrix, milestone, or carry forward. This is a quick snapshot of how OKRs are typically implemented. So like I said, we could speak to Asia HRM team and come up with, so Mary, me and Uma were initially discussing, and then I would definitely take it back to Zul and Patrick, who are also part of the core committee, saying, how do we really keep some of these conversations going? Can we do a once a month practice sharing sessions just to follow through and we also hear back. So OKRs come from the strategic objectives and they come down at the business level, OKR, unit level OKRs, department, team level. So let me quickly take you. Overall, I think in terms of the process, so these are the implementations. So there's the context setting that has to happen. The team OKRs have to come up. Then we have to see how the OKRs are getting managed. There's a push, pull, so all of those are there in the frameworks. And then how do we really make it sustainable? So for the organization to follow through in the years to come. This is a quick example of how Mind Valley converted their vision to an objective when they implemented OKR. And if you see, it's so much more, it is still aspirational, but it's so much more, it gives the context, it brings in the organization strategic direction they are in, right? It's much more focused. So initial one, the mission or the vision said to help spreading enlightened ideas, but they didn't know what they were trying to do and what they wanted to achieve. So when they went into the OKRs and created OKRs, they said, we want to be the biggest rise. They want to create. So if you remember, it will start with a verb. So that's how they did, right? To create the biggest rise in human consciousness, and then said, we want to do it by 2038. So they're giving them time. So though that's always not important, right? So we saw that setting a time frame or any of those metrics can actually get down to the key result areas, which they also did. And they said, we want to transform and all of those, right? So let's move on to some of their objectives, right? They said, okay, so sorry, this is the objective. And now they said, okay, these are the key results that they set for themselves. So what did they mean by, so I'll keep moving between the two slides, so just bear with me on that. They said, we want to create the biggest rise in human consciousness, right? So now they have to qualify, right? Because the key results have to be qualified. So they said, okay, what does that biggest rise mean? That's what you see in the first key result. To scale to 1 billion users, right? So going back to the earlier example of Google saying they wanted to stream 1 billion hours of video, but in order to do that, they first had to get to maybe decide what those 1 billion hour videos would be around, right? The whether it has to be entertainment, educational, what, right? So just trying to see. So coming back to this, they had to create a platform because they said we want to do it through transformation, all of that. But then where do they do it, right? Because they can't be doing it anywhere and everywhere. So they had to create a platform to accelerate the transformation, make organizations and OSs. This is again something which is very, very high level, right? And there is the entire video link that you see here is there. I would share that, right, with all of you. And then quickly moving on. So I'm sorry, my laptop suddenly decided to go on the low power mode. So Uma, I might request you to bring it up sometime, but I'll quickly go ahead with the slides. So how do they now get to the billion users, right? So now they need to have 1 billion user accounts. So what do they mean by users? They had to qualify that also. Who's a qualified user in that 1 billion, right? So they needed someone who comes and creates an account with them. Then would they reach everything in one stage? May not be, right? They're saying, okay, if you see the last one, it says attain 50 million paying students annually, right? And it also gives a 5 billion revenue projection, right? So if you see each of these key results, right, were qualified into the matrix and all of those areas where they measure performance. So they measure, it becomes measurable at some point, right? Alignment across teams, very important. How they broke it down. I'll take one of the examples, the fourth one, because that's how they actually brought in a lot of team to work on this. So they said, okay, when they said we had to create a global tribe of change makers, what did they mean? So they said we had to get a lot of students or learners onto these sessions. They wanted to retain the members. They wanted to convert members into change makers. But how did that really make a difference for their teams, right? So see, each of these teams at the Mind Valley end then had one of these areas where they measured performance. Achieve one of the goals, saying how do we really achieve, let's say, connect all of these into one connected acceleration, happiness, whatever, right? And then turn members into change makers. They actually came down year wise. If you see, year wise, they had 2019 what they wanted to achieve, 2020 what they wanted to achieve, and each of these, right, became. So now if you see, get down, if they have to get the best authors and in the content in transformation, what does it mean for each of those people, right? So it got down to the 1.2 key results, the 1.3, and all of those. How OKRs help teams? Communication is very important. I think what I love is communication, value alignment, focus, and collaboration. I think those are elements which are key to any of the teams that come on board and create OKRs. You saw at the beginning that OKR drives engagement. It's very important for organizations to build OKRs at the team level and together, right? It doesn't happen just one person who decides and it's a top down. Doesn't happen that phase. This slide is one of my favorites. For some reason, it doesn't render well, but I think the example that is here is a head coach. Sorry. Sorry, Uma. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, yes. Shall I share?
Yeah, if you could share the screen. I'm just trying to try to stop the share. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So while Uma is bringing it up, I think.
Abby, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I think where I'm coming to is if you so Uma, I send it to you on WhatsApp. I think so. Sorry for that, everyone. I think something unavoidable. I couldn't really stay back at home. I'm really sorry for this, but I didn't want to miss the session as well. So coming back, I think where we were talking is how does OKR really drive engagement, right? That's something that's very important. Uh, OKRs have to be done at the team level. OKRs have to be at a level where it. So okay, so Uma, we still see your email on the screen.
Yes, Abhi, I'm just pushing the deck from my WhatsApp to email,
Okay,
and then from here I'll take it.
sorry for that. Yeah. So I think coming back to the overall conversation on the team thing, it's very important that we do some of these as a team and as an organization, right? So we've seen examples of. So I was going through the video that Vishen Lakhani, right, had played, and then he talks about creating those moments of truth, the moments of sharing for all the team members, right? It's very important we create a team. OKR is not a one-man show, right? Most of the organizations or many of the organizations that have failed in implementing OKRs or in the framework are the ones where they have made it a kind of a part-time role, and where they kind of do not bring the entire team together, right? So we were on that slide where I was showing that how objective for a head coach becomes important, or the key results for the other department heads, let's call it that way, right? So let's say one of the head coaches in a Super Bowl match was to increase the number of passes, right? A 300-yard pass, if that's the one of the key results. And the other key result could be reduce the defense, right? And get more points, increase the defense and get more points. And then what happens is each of these objectives, the objective is to win the Super Bowl match, right? And the key results are, then we have to increase our passing, we have to better our defense. Now, each of these, right? So the passing becomes the objective of the offensive coach. So let's say the head coach has three other coaches, who's a offensive coach, who's a defensive coach, and then let's say some special needs coach, right? So each of these key results for a head coach becomes the key result area for for the next level coaches. So that's the analogy that I like, because that really helps us bring in the perspective of organization level OKRs to department level OKRs, right? And bringing back um, some of the elements that it's not always done at one level, right? It has to be done at multiple levels. So there's a upstream, there's a downstream. Now that is the other thing where KPIs actually make a difference with OKRs, right? KPIs are always for the own team, but in OKR it's important. I showed it one slide where it said it has to be aligned across teams. Now, why is it important to be aligned across teams? Because that's where others know what I'm doing, right? So technically, everyone upfront and upstream and downstream, they know what the other person is doing. That's something which is, again, very important when we are bringing in things like OKR. Moving on, I think. Sorry, I'm having some. So Uma, would you be able to, were you able to bring up the screen?
Yeah, I am, but I cannot push it to my Gmail because the file size is too high.
No, no, hold on. I've got it. Just give me a second.
You want me to share the screen?
Yeah, yeah. If you can share the screen, that's best. No, that's fine. I think we. Yeah. So you could bring up the presentation in case you have the previous one also. I think it's fine. So let me just continue the session. Sorry everyone once again. Didn't really see this coming. Prepare better next time for sure. But I think the few other points that I definitely wanted to cover is what's the accountability like, right, for an OKR, right? How do we really say that people have to really uh, be accountable and have the flexibility to fail, right? So if you really see the framework that Google and Intel and all of those large companies they basically applied was they had some aspirational goals which they said as part of their overall objectives, and then they said we will have some committed goals, right? So the committed goals are the ones which typically are the achievable ones, and the aspirational goals are the one which they're okay if they don't achieve those goals, right? So and the statistics say that almost 40% of the aspirational goals in Google don't get achieved every year. But that's the cushion that everyone has. Now, how does it help, right? It helps with OKRs or with organizations making OKR framework a safe place to try but fail, which is very important. And if you don't do that, then your overall, that big, hairy, audacious objective or the goals don't get achieved, right? Organizations don't align with the strategic objectives, or OKRs do not facilitate achievement of those large organization level objectives, right? So it's definitely made a place to fail, but that's okay. And that's why comes the reason why someone should never try to link OKR to performance or bonuses, compensation, target incentives, right? What happens if we do that as HR professionals? I think what happens is very straightforward. If that's what we do, people stop because OKRs are done by the teams, right? So the team sets up their own OKRs based on the organization level or the previous level KRs, right? So the organization objectives come down to the business unit, department, and the teams. The teams would start setting only achievable goals. And that's the reason when John Doerr or Andy Grove said, hey, that's not something that we should be kind of promoting, right? Because as soon as we get to a level where we are allowing people to say, okay, you decide your goals, but all of them you need to achieve, and you would get paid, your promotion revision exercises would be contingent upon achieving those goals, people start, or organizations and teams start setting achievable goals for themselves. So how the accountability really is something which comes back and shows or is measurable. So there's this example where, and I'm sorry if you're not able to see the slides, but I think there is this assessment scoring sheet for 4 sales executives, right? And all of them had the same objective, saying all of them had the same key result area, saying you need to bring in 10 customers, 10 new customers, and they had to score themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. So one of them said, I could bring only 7, which means they achieved 70% of the target. But what was the score that individual assigned to himself or herself? It was a 0.9, which means they gave, they scored themselves very high. What was the reason? The reason was the market was anyways down. There was a slump in the market, and there was no one, right, who was doing better. And these 7 new customers would bring in enough revenue, and the effort and the outcome that was required for these 7 were almost same that was required to bring in the other 3. Now that's where I think is something which that's where it becomes a lot more important for us to ensure that we allow people to fail, but still show them that they are achieving on a scale, right, on the progress. The good thing is there was another sales representative who actually achieved 10 on 10, which means she or he brought in all the 10 new customers that they were supposed to bring in. But this individual scored herself or himself 0.7. What was the reason? The reason was for them, they said, it was very easy for me to achieve this. I should have set, I kind of realized that I've set a very achievable goal or OKR. It was too low. Now, that was an example of flexibility, accountability that OKRs bring in. And that is one of the reasons that OKRs have to be aspirational, at the same time achievable, but we don't link it to the performance or pay. At the same time, I think many of the organizations that have been successful have set up stretch goals, like we said, and if 70% is met, that's fine. We don't always need to achieve all the goals that we set. So we go back to Google's example of giving human beings the access to all the world's information, and then YouTube becoming one of the channels, right? One of the key result areas. There's I would share the deck, and there's one video for Vishal Lakhani, and then in that video he actually picks up some of the examples for organizations in a seminar that he conducts, and that will help you understand or clarify how objectives and key results can be set. Very nice video. I'm sorry we couldn't play that, but then I'll definitely encourage you to all of you to watch that. Moving on, I think I just wanted to end with one more comment saying, how do we really then get back in the scale of becoming an OKR practitioner, starting some of those elements of practice or tools and techniques that are there. So when I share the slides, there's one slide which is about towards the end, about slide 44, where I've listed out the top courses on OKR, some of the tools that OKRs, some of the organizations that have OKR frameworks and supports implementation and the ongoing OKR, starting from coaches to come up with the frameworks, all of that, right? For Asia HRM, actually, we have our partner as Fitbots. Fitbots has a training academy, and they also have a tool and platform. Many of the OKR training academies have the training part of it, but they don't have the platform. So OKR has, Fitbots has both. So that's one of the places I've also been attached to. And with that, I think I'll kind of stop here. I know it was a little messed up, and I'm again sorry for that. But overall, I think I would be more than happy to see if there are any questions that I can take up.
Hi, Alvin, you're on mute.
Yeah, I was just trying to see if there are any questions, comments from anyone. I was just trying to go to the chat box and see.
So one question has come, Avi, how to get domain from People Strong Software? How to get domain from People Strong Software? No, if you could please help us to understand your question a little better.
Yeah, Nukin, why don't you unmute yourself just to understand the question a little better?
Good afternoon. I install people strong software, but I don't know how to get the domain name.
Okay, so is that for your organization or for your own initiative, or you're trying to get the domain name for?
It's for me, for my company.
Yeah. Okay. So I think a domain typically is not in scope. So when you come up with the IT setup is where the domain comes in, right? It's so domain is somewhere there are a lot of the hosting companies, right? Let's say we have Wix, we have GoDaddy. I don't know if I'm getting the question right, but I can reach out to you offline to clarify a little bit more. But I think domain for your company is something that is part of the IT setup. It's always not in scope of the strategic objectives, right? If that's what you really are asking.
Yes, it's okay.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, so I think Tony's question I tried answering. It was the question around agile and scrum. Sorry, agile and scrum and
OKR.
uh,
OKR and Scrum.
yeah. And I think the strategy map question I also tried to address. But I think so when I share the deck, I think there are these examples of KPI versus OKR versus smart goals, right? That's a very interesting slide. The source of all the slides, all the content is available in each of the slides. So feel free to go through those. There is, I kind of like to end by saying there's one of the slides at the end which has 3 sections and which gives one of the sections where John Doerr, who brought really Tony, yes, we would share the copy of the slides, the entire set. You would get all of everyone here. Will share the slides, and when you get it right, I think it's the last slide where I would really urge all of you to go through those video links. That's one of the links by John Doerr where he actually brings in how Andy Grove explains OKR when he took OKR to Intel. That's I think the last YouTube. It's a TED talk from from John Doerr. Do that. We I can feel free to reach me. Look me up on Asia HRM website. I'm there part of the core committee. And thanks everyone. I think that's all I had. Thanks Zul. Really appreciate your time. You joining. So, Mary, Patrick, anything that you want to maybe sum up towards the end? That's all we had for today.
I shared a beginner's guide to OKR for those who just started with OKR. So I shared in the chat group. So in the chat here. So you feel free to check it out. And also I remember last year I think we had also a session on OKR by Kuna, right? By Kuna. So I shared also the slides with them. So for additional information. So thank you, and thank you for joining. And also I would like to invite everyone. So please feel free to visit our website at www.asiahrm.com, and also visit also the website of Asia HRM, AsiaHRWomen'sClub.com. Okay, so the sister organization of Asia HRM for specifically for women, but those men can join also. Thank you, Avin. Thanks, Uma.
Thanks, Mary. Thanks, everyone. Once again, apologies for the little mix-up, but I'll share the slides. The slide has my contact. I'll be more than happy, and I'll discuss with everyone, the other core committee members, and maybe we can have once a month a 1 hour session on everyone just coming and sharing their practices around OKR. So it helps in my learning also in the journey of OKR. So thanks everyone once again. Have a great Saturday afternoon. Thank you. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Uma.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Sue.